gentlemen. It is album review time once again. And for this review, Duncan Ross and I have been checking out the new album from Australian extreme progressive metalers, nae Obliviscaris.
Nailed
we
it.
think.
We think. No, you think. Don't lump us in on this.
Yeah.
This is you.
Yeah. The band's new album, Exul, will be released on March 24th via Season of Mist. Drum tracking for Exul started in March 2020. Remember that, gentlemen?
What
That
happened?
month.
Something happened in 2020?
March 2020.
March? Oh, I'm
March
trying to remember
2020. Daniel Presland laid down his drums in Nashville, Tennessee with American producer Mark Lewis. As flight cancellations increased and borders shuttered, Presland made it home literally hours before Australia closed theirs.
Sick.
Lewis, guitarist Benjamin Barrett, and bassist Martino Garatoni weren't as lucky. They were due to land in Australia in the days that followed to continue tracking, but were forced to remain overseas indefinitely. With recording studios closed throughout Melbourne, a slow, tedious, life-altering 2-year grind to complete Exul ensued for the band. There are, however, happy accidents scattered throughout the creation of Exul. The extra, unexpected downtime allowed the band to fine-tune and even rewrite parts previously set in stone before the pandemic. Getting an opportunity to have a song mostly done for a year or so and then go back to it, find out what you loved about it in the first place, and then maybe even prove it in some ways was a nice silver lining from all the delays, says Charles. I think because we had so many delays that were out of control, we were even more determined to take our time to make sure when the time came to record and mix that we ensured it was the absolute best it could be in every way. 7 additional studios and 3 more countries later, Exul was finally mixed and mastered in July 2022. Our approach was always the same, says Charles, which is essentially to write and see what comes out. Exul definitely had its challenges during the songwriting process. Part of the beauty of how our music comes together is that we are quite different individuals bringing an array of ideas together. From there, we work out how to combine them into something that is seamless and beautiful to us. We were determined to make this our best and most complete album yet, which definitely resulted in it taking longer, but we are so proud of this album and excited to finally share it with the world. Exul was produced, mixed and mastered by Mark Lewis in Nashville, USA, and also co-produced by the band. Okay, so I knew nothing about this band, hadn't heard any of their previous albums, and then when we were flirting with ideas for reviews, young Ross mentioned this band.
Sound of someone getting thrown under a bus. See how he did that there? He was very carefully. I don't know where he's going to land on this, but he was positioning the pawn on the board just in case to protect the king.
Had you heard of them, or had you actually listened to them?
I'd never listened to them. I've just heard a good bit of buzz around them. Seen them on a couple of festival posters and stuff like that. And people seem to be quite into them. One of those bands that people who are in seem to be all in. One of those.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Duncan, you totally new to you as well?
I have their logo tattooed right on my chest. Right above my heart.
Good to know.
No, I had never... Like, honestly, we were joking earlier on about how the name sounds like a Glaswegian, fucking Harry Potter spell. I literally never heard them before, and not only did I not know of them, but when you mentioned where they were from, I was like, really? Because there's also a part of me that feels like, of course they're from Australia, because Australia has a incredible pedigree of talented musicians. Probably punch well above what their weight actually is when it comes to musical genres and all the rest. So yeah, I had not heard anything. I didn't even know what kind of style we were going in. Not the style I thought I was getting, in an expected and at times pleasant way. So I will leave it at that for now.
Interesting. Ross, I'll let you kick us off. Since it was technically your choice to review this.
We already had it recorded, Dave. You didn't need to reiterate it.
Doubling down on that.
Was it called in chess when you know you're going to lose? It's like Zug Zwan. It's the point where I know I've lost. I see when you said this album started writing in 2020, I was like, a lot of this is starting to add up. Because I actually I do like this. I think this is, at points, very, very good. I just think it sounds like people who had too long to work on something. And instead of writing there on their essay, they've wrote they are over and over again. I just feel like I feel like so many of the songs you could have trimmed at least a minute, if not more, off of it. But the ideas that they have are actually so good. It's just I feel like there's a lot of fat on it. Like, I know, based on a little thing we said earlier, the violins are going to be a turning point for a lot of people, I think. Because I think sometimes it's the best part about a song, and other times it takes me right out. But what I will say is the fucking guitar on this, man. This boy is shredding. And I'm a bassist, so I was in immediately because this boy is fucking popping off. Literally from the first song, he is just shredding solos all over this album. Like, even the songs that I was kind of less keen on, the bass was still keeping me kind of in the pocket the whole time. Because I didn't know what he was going to do next. And that's like one of the best things you can do in music. Even if the guitar riff's got a little bit samey, that bass player did not get that memo. The violin player might have. The bass player did not. But it's with an album like Prog, I feel like so many bands take themselves very seriously. But and it could probably be the Australian thing in them, but for me this just sounded like a band having a lot of fun. And that's what you want. Like, if you're having fun in the studio, your fans are going to hear that as well. And to me, it did sound like a band having a really, really good time. With like the blending and vocals, I really enjoyed. Like, the screaming was, for a prog band, it was a harsh. Like, I was not kind of ready for it to go as hard as it did. But I really enjoyed it when it did, and I kind of wanted more of that when it started kind of ramping up a wee bit. But I could see why some people might be turned off by it, even though I'm probably more in the positive camp. I can see why people won't like it, and I think those criticisms are probably very valid for a lot of it as well. But I'm intrigued to see what you guys think, because you guys are a wee bit heavier than me, so I don't know if this would be too light for you.
It is winter weight, and I am working hard to shift it, Ross. Fuck's sake. Like, honestly, skinny, like beanpole Dave's constantly on about the weight here.
It kind of reminded me a little of the Obsidious album from last year. Iconic, I think it was called. That album was maybe slightly heavier, but the kind of a lot of the balance and the styles of that album had a similar feel to Exul. But I feel like this is an album that is all about the balance from every aspect, like rhythmically, tempo wise. You know, you've got the kind of the bendy mid-pace grooves right through to like full on blast beats and tremolo pick guitars. It's got balance in the vocals. You've got the light and shade going on there with the death metal growls right into the clean prog vocals. And even though this does have like an extreme side to it, they also bring in the strings in the forms of the violins and the cellos to balance out.
It wants to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It balances out that heaviness. And I think they do a really good job of that, just bringing those two sides together. And it didn't really feel overpowering at any point either. It can be really dark and quite sinister, but then there's a very tasteful, kind of delicate side to them that gives you a more of a kind of emotional streak as well, which you don't often get in a lot of kind of extreme metal bands. Musically, just to kind of tag on what you were saying there, these guys are talented as fuck. Like, musicianship wise, the standard is extremely high. I agree with you. I think the bass playing from Martino is ridiculous. That guy has skills. It's very much in that kind of like Obscura or Cynic kind of vibe, and the playing very progressive, very experimental, lots of little runs and kind of jazzy kind of licks, but it keeps your ear totally locked in to what's going on. And that goes for the drumming and the guitar work as well. It's all very precise, super fluid, and same with the compositions. You can tell this has been worked on intensively. Each song is very meticulous. It's very, thoroughly pieced together, making sure that every transition is seamless and that the tracks kind of flow into one another. That might be a slight complaint that I have. Sometimes I did lose track of where I was in the album. They almost flow too well into one another. And as you mentioned, the songs are quite long, so I felt like I was kind of losing track of time a bit, and I did wonder, am I still on the same track, or have I moved on? That distinction may become clearer with more listens. I listened to this 4 times, so maybe if I listen to it more, I maybe hear the breaks more. But in terms of the playing, the technical aspects, I didn't really have any complaints. I think it's very, very impressive, hugely creative. I love the inclusion of the strings. They are probably my highlight of the album, as well as the bass playing. On the other side, I did feel like some of the heavier parts could have been heavier. I didn't feel like they were quite quenching my thirst for something extreme. Like I wanted to go a bit harder on the guitars. The heavy vocals are killer, and the drumming is very inventive, no issues there. But I just felt like I was kind of lacking some bigger kind of riff moments, where they kind of lock into something that really grabs your attention. There are heavy moments on this, but I didn't feel like there was anything that like they made a switch, like the kind of the switch had been flipped, almost. There's a track called Graal, track 5 I think it is. It had a really, really good moment where there was a moment where they just kind of simplified everything and the whole band kind of sync up, and I felt like, that was a little bit more impactful, but I just didn't feel like there was enough of those moments throughout the album. Vocally, so the clean vocals, I'm going to be honest here, I'm not 100% sold on the clean vocals. They are very prog in a more kind of like traditional sense, almost theatrical to an extent. When I was listening, I was like, it reminded me a little bit of Spencer Stiletto, but a little bit more kind of theatrical in style. He's got that range, and the Obsidious album had a bit of that as well, but it's just a personal taste thing. It just wasn't for me. It felt a little bit forced at times, and there's no question the guy can sing. Like he's got a crazy good voice. His pitch is perfect. Style wise, it just maybe wasn't my favorite.
Theater kid at times. I thought I know exactly what you mean. Like he's obviously brilliant singer, but a bit showman at times.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing, I feel like I'm just shitting on this album now. The other thing that I felt was it didn't feel like a massively memorable album. I don't know if that was just me, but I found like by the time I got to the end of it, I didn't really have many moments that kind of stayed with me afterwards. I enjoyed it when I had it on. It's very, I'd say this is like a virtuoso type album. There's lots of very impressive playing and technicality, but in terms of actual hooks, it didn't leave me with much. I maybe just felt there wasn't, like, I don't know, there was the big moments that were kind of just lacking from it. And I feel like there should have been kind of more of this. It's a very busy album, if you know what I mean. Like there were just moments on it that I just didn't feel like it was kind of fully grabbing me. The recording, the production of the album sounds great. I felt like each instrument had its own kind of lane, especially that bass. I felt like the guitars maybe were competing a little bit for volume. I think it maybe could have been lifted slightly, but in general, I think it's well produced. I thought the drums sounded very organic, which I loved as well. So a bit of a mixed bag for me. I can't argue with the technical level of this album, but there were things that were kind of issues for me. Overall. Duncan, what about yourself?
Ross.
Oh, no.
You had one job. I don't ask much from you, but this is your review right now. There are moments that I totally sync up with this album.
Right.
And there are moments where I am kind of a little bit lost. It kind of, as an analogy, I would say it's like a boat without an anchor. So it's constantly moving, never stationary. You never really get a grasp on it. Yeah. The lack of memorable elements you were mentioning, I think is probably its biggest fault. It's an album that really, and I know some people are going to complain that prog music should challenge you and should have that dexterity, but should also be memorable. You should be able to lock in to particular segments or particular sections, so when you go back to the re-listen, you're like, oh, my favourite bit's coming up.
Yeah.
I really struggled with this. Now, for truth and honesty, I listened to this 3 times today. So I gave it the three time listen. I listened to it this morning on the train into work. I listened to it at lunchtime on a more serene walk. And then I listened to it essentially about an hour and a half before we started recording, when things were a bit calmer in the house. To give it 3 different listening experiences, doing 3 different things. And I had a couple of takeaways. Specifically, I think the production is really good on this one. It's hard to move away from that. I think everything is very, very clear. I think at times the strings, and I'm going to come back to a bit more, are a distraction to how heavy the guitar is. So bits where the guitar should be heavier that you mentioned, Dave, the strings are so loud in the mix, are so well mixed actually, and loud in the mix, that actually takes away from those heavier elements, because as a listener of music, because that's the instrument that's not played as much as all the others, your ear instantly focuses in on that, and it becomes a bit of a distraction. I will 100% agree. I actually thought I was going to be the one that was going to get shit on here. I totally agree with you. I don't think the clean vocals work on this at all. I think they are a huge distraction. I think they sound actually like the oddest element on here, and it's not because they're not well done. In point of fact, I think they're excellent. But every time they came in, they felt like they were at the least opportune moment, or at the most obvious moment. So there was nothing about it that came in that was like, oh, that's really clever how they've met. It just kind of felt bizarrely inserted, almost like the Will Ferrell moment on Saturday Night Live with Don't Fear the Reaper with the cowbell. And you're like, yeah, Don't Fear the Reaper does have a really loud cowbell. Why does that track and no other track from Blue Oyster Cult have a really loud cowbell? That feels a bit strange. It was a weird oddity that stuck out to me more and more, especially by the third listen, where it almost once again became a bit of a distraction. And ultimately, that's where I land on this album. This album, at its core, is very, very, very well written. And we're all in total agreement here. The musicianship is on point. I'll double down with something that Ross said here. I think sometimes too much time with something doesn't always lend itself to the best outcome. Like, sometimes the best albums I've ever heard are the albums where a band has literally 3 weeks in between tours and they churn out something that feels urgent and necessary. And I think this has went the other way. It's almost went so precise that it's become a bit sterile. And I don't think their sound overall leans towards that, because some of the best moments in it are where you're getting those creative flurries of guitar work against bass work against really cool drumming, and some of that more savage vocals, which it never feels like the band fully gets behind how savage some of the vocals get at times. Kind of feels like that's the heaviest element, which it should never be. The vocals should never be the heaviest element in a band. The vocals should accentuate how heavy the band is. So it became a very mixed bag on listening. Now, granted, I might listen to this 3 days from now with I haven't listened to this 3 times in 1 day perspective, but it's very rare that I feel like I've fully summed up my opinion on an album in a day, and I kind of feel that way with this one. I am not listening to the previous stuff. I don't know how far they've strayed from any sort of path that they've done before, but I think if you're in on this one, I could see why someone could turn around and say to me, you know, this band was one of their favourite bands, because all the core elements are there. Just together, it doesn't quite fit fully for me. And as a result, it left me in a bit of a confused space at the end, that I feel like any compliment I'm giving it is damning it with faint praise, and at the same time, any diss I'm giving it is a positive. Where I'm like that, the melodic vocals are amazing. They just shouldn't be in this band. The violin work at times is incredible, along with like the cello. It sounds awesome, but it's overused. Look, the guitar work is incredible, and it gets like really punchy, but never gets as heavy as I want. It's those things where there's always an and but in everything that I want to say about it, and that can be a frustrating thing from a reviewer's point of view, and it's even more frustrating when it comes to the grade, because I've changed my grade on all 3 listens of this one now, settled on what I'm going to give it, but I'm at that point when I'm almost doubting if I listen to this 3 days from now, if that grade goes up or down from what I'm going to give it. So I get like when Ross is saying he's heard people talk about them a lot, I get why people would. They do have a uniqueness about how it's all brought in together. I just think there's 1 or 2 elements that are maybe just a little bit too not my particular taste. So there we go.
Okay.
There's parts of it I really liked, and then
there's bits when it just like all
really
hooks up.
Kind of annoyed me. Like, it's so strange for me to like swing so harshly.
The last two tracks for me, like, Growl
bits.
Yeah, Growl into Ahodina. Or when I was like that, see if I did more of this. I think Growl's the more conventional track, but the very final track, which is the shortest as well, is kind of a quasi ballad. And when I listened to it, I was actually like, they could pull this out whenever they want. They could long form some of that, and it would work really, really well on the album. And it kind of almost feels like I feel like they should have done more of that. I think it closes really interesting and strong, but the journey to that is
I think it's kind of like what Dave said. I think the third track on it, Anatomy of Keyswins, it has this massive build up that then just goes nowhere, and it's like it never fully just locks in. That all members playing the same thing, that massive big riff or big groove or whatever never really hits. And I'm okay to go on that journey, but I just feel like if I even had that one moment where it all clicks into place and then started that whole routine again, it'd be a much better album for that.
It'd be like climbing a mountain because you can't wait to see the view, and then you get to the top of it and find out it's cloudy. You're like, it's that thing. There's a frustration that does come with a build up. There is, like, where you want the payoff of the journey you've spent, and like that track is close to 9.5 minutes long. That you do feel like I'm going to get, and that when you take into account that it's part 2 of a 2-part track, and the previous part is also about 8 minutes long, that you kind of get to that thing where you want that riff where everything just locks in. You're like, ray of sunshine hit me, choir behind me singing, and it never does that. And I don't know why. To them it works, and to the people that like it, it will work. To me, maybe as someone that's just coming new to the band and maybe not acclimated to how they write music, to me that felt like a bit of an unnecessary blue balling of a listen. So.
I think, and like, there's going to be people out there that are going to love this.
Of course, man.
After I'd kind of done my listens and kind of got my thoughts on the album, I was like, I wonder if there's any reviews out of this so far, like what's other people's opinions. And I only clicked on one review, but the one I clicked on was the first one that came up in Google. It was like a 9 out of 10. I was like,
I get it though.
People are going to love this.
I understand why someone would go all in on that, and it's not like if you're not predisposed to the things that we're all talking about in terms of your music, and you followed this band, and you like that immersive experience, or that sort of kind of proggy extreme sort of thing like that. It's all across the album. I just don't think as an album. It's the anchor thing. I don't think there's a point which grims it at any point which pulls me back in and keeps me. It just feels like a journey that never seems to want to end. And by the time it gets to the end, it gives me the best thing at the end. But I'm kind of like, I want those almost dotted through the album as points I can come back to and go, But then I love Tool. And I've heard people tell me how Tool are the most overrated band in the world because they constantly go in directions. And I'm like, no, every song has that moment which everything links in. But to that listener, they don't hear that moment. That to them isn't the payoff that they wanted. So it feels unsatisfying. I think I'm the reverse of that now. I'm on the other side. I listen to that. The payoff doesn't feel ever fully worth the journey. But as a musician or someone that listens to a lot of music, I can totally fucking appreciate what these guys are doing, and it's good. It's good on that level. As an album, for me, it doesn't sound like something that would elevate it amongst a pack of other albums.
Okay. So ratings for Exul.
Watch the spread.
Ross, what are you thinking?
I've done a Duncan and I've changed my rating about 10 times, right? But this review, I think, has made me knock a 0.5 off it. I think I'm going to go 3.5. I think I'm going 3.5. Okay.
I don't think you understand what doing a Duncan actually involves. It usually involves
so many
time
things
on a sex
like.
register.
Tag going off. My tag shocked me, so I put it down 0.5. But yeah, I think there's as many things that I like that I don't, but I think the musicianship, just like, I'm big on that kind of techie stuff, so that kind of keeps me locked in. It's the clean vocals. A couple of times I think the violin goes a bit too Casio keyboard, but then there's big riffs that I like as well, so I think a 3.5's fair.
Okay. I am going to go 3 out of 5. I think it's an incredibly impressive album from a technical aspect. I love the strings. I really did enjoy the strings, but as an actual album that left me with something to think about afterwards, it didn't really do it for me. I didn't have that like burning desire to go back to it straight away. The clean vocals just weren't my thing, personal preference. I didn't think there was anything wrong with his vocals. They were just a little bit too kind of theatrical in style for me. And guitar-wise, just kind of lacking in that big kind of riff moment. There's loads going on guitar-wise. It's very technical and clinical, but I just needed some more kind of meatier moments, and it didn't really kind of happen for me. So I'm going to go 3 out of 5. Duncan.
That burning desire that you're looking for is called chlamydia. So just so you know, yeah, I'm coming with you on this one, Dave. 3 for me. I like I see from it's the grade that I give to like tech death metal and something like that. I appreciate everything I listen to. It just isn't something I'm passionate about. And that's kind of what I feel about this album. I appreciate everything it's doing. I just, at the end of it, I'm in a position where I want to recommend the album to someone. It doesn't light my fire in a way that I really want it to. But if this appeared on someone's top 10 list at the end of the year, I wouldn't be like, huh? Like, I would get it. I can completely understand how you would end that way, so it wouldn't offend me that it appeared. They were like, you clearly haven't fucking listened to this album. I get all those elements. It just doesn't have the things that I think make an album moreish enough to continue coming back to it. I think I've got, like I say, 3 listens in, I think I have got out of this album all I will ever get.
Okay, so that is Ne Obliviscaris Exul out on March 24th on Season of Mist.
Like a pro.
Links below to the band, to the pre-order, all that sort of stuff, so you can check out. Let us know what you think. This one, I think there's going to be people on both sides of this album. Let us know what you thought of it. Stick some comments in. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is our review of that new album. Thank you for checking out.